Sabbath turned up in the late 60s. They've evolved out of a blues rock band, very sort of, I think they were called Earth. But by the time they become Black Sabbath and they've gone in to record that first album, I mean, they were just creating a raw, youthful, angry, energetic kind of rock music, which was a perfect blueprint for what heavy metal would become.
The whole thing derived from the British blues scene of the mid-60s, which was the kind of music that really grabbed me and my contemporaries.
I think when the 60s were ending and the peace and love had evaporated, we were looking at a new decade, and Black Sabbath certainly tried very hard to give us a soundtrack for that.
Did Black Sabbath invent heavy metal?
Of course they didn't invent heavy metal.
No.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Sabbath probably did invent heavy metal.
I think probably Black Sabbath invented heavy metal with the song Black Sabbath.
No, Black Sabbath certainly did not invent heavy metal, but my God, they capitalized on it.
I think they took the medium and really honed it, and very early on made it work, probably better than anyone else had ever made it work.
When they turned up, they certainly moved the whole musical genre on tenfold.
They invented their own sound, without a doubt.
I think where they had their greatest popularity was the fact that you could quite easily copy them. They weren't virtuosi as such. They came up with an entry-level brand of music that obviously got more complicated, but set the template for a lot of other bands to follow. If you listen to the first album, Black Sabbath, you can hear a band that's creating its sound, that's putting the building blocks together.
What was unique about Sabbath's sound was that it would probably have scared the hell out of everyone when they heard it back in the day.
Compositionally, particularly with Tony Iommi and his very creative way of coming up with endless numbers of riffs and other musical structures that are often put together in quite an interesting and different way.
The unique thing about the Sabbath sound, and it always has been through all the ages, is Tony Iommi's guitar sound.
Iommi's power chords. I mean, this man just conjured up riff after riff after riff.
I'm just a guitar player that wants to play, and whatever would be something that people would say, well, is unique to me, it would probably be the sound and maybe just the way I approach it, but how it is, I don't know. To explain yourself is quite difficult.
Some people say my love can't be true. My love, and I show you. I will give you those things that are real. The sun, the moon, the stars, all that I can, yeah.
One of the aspects of Black Sabbath that is highly identifiable and original and unique is, I am told, and I think I recall the story from the man's mouth himself, Tony Iommi lost the top of his fingers on one hand.
Yeah, I had an accident many years ago. As you can see here, where you want it there, that finger and that finger, where I used to do sheet metal work. What happened one day, the day I was leaving, funny enough, from the job to turn professional, the old turn professional one, and I was doing pressing this piece of metal that I used to have to weld afterwards, and the press just came straight down on me, and of course, as you pull it back, I pulled the ends of the fingers off, and at the time I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I'd done.
He'd given up the guitar after that, but he decided when he heard how the gypsy guitarist Django Reinhardt played with just a couple of fingers, he thought he'd relearn. So he got a couple of thimbles, put them on top of the digits, and developed a sound that was really more or less all his own.
I got a squeezy bottle and melted it down, made it into a ball, got a hot soldering iron and made a sort of hole in it, and got it down to fit my finger. So I got this big ball on the end of my finger. Then I sat there all night, filing it down with some sandpaper to make a shape of a thimble. Then I put some leather on it because it wouldn't grip otherwise. It was plastic, it'd just slip off the string. I put some leather on, which made something like this, which is a plastic and then leather on it. And I used that and off I went.
The song Black Sabbath, you hear the graveyard bell, there's a peal of thunder, and in we go with a three-note guitar riff that's probably entered the annals of rock, and quite rightly.
Black Sabbath, again, was done by just me coming up with a riff and playing it sort of loud.
The song Black Sabbath, the title track from their first album. If you had to talk about the birthplace of heavy metal, this song definitely contributes, is a big contributing factor.
Black Sabbath's a wonderfully evocative song.
It's really heavy. It starts quite slow and moody. It's a real centerpiece and showcase for Tony Iommi's guitar playing. The main central riff is very much sort of on the dark side.
The riff is absolutely terrifying. And it really is as scary a riff. It could have been in The Exorcist. It's that scary.
Funnily enough, that's a flattened fifth that Tony Iommi's playing, and I bet he didn't realise that in medieval churches was definitely a no-no. It had a satanic quality to it and satanic implications.
The lyrics just scare the life out of you. What is this that stands before me? And you're like, oh. And the way Ozzy sings it with this menace and intent.
It's straight out of a Hammer horror film.
And then towards the end, you've got a fast section where Ozzy's sort of losing his mind.
Go and be well.
just the best opener Black Sabbath ever came up with for an album.
That track opening an album that cost, I think, £400 to produce and was dashed off in 2 days before they took the Channel Ferry to play in Europe is an absolute classic. When Black Sabbath's record company heard Paranoid, they knew straight away it was a hit. I think they knew before the band members knew themselves.
Paranoid is without doubt one of the classic heavy metal songs of all time. It's top 10.
Paranoid's an all-time classic because you can walk into any jukebox in any bar in most towns and it'll be there.
I think this is probably Sabbath's sort of their signature tune almost.
2 minutes plus of pop metal is probably the best way for me to describe it, because it actually is a pop song when you listen to it.
It was quite astonishing at the time because hardly anybody would play it on the radio. It was too heavy. So people that heard it responded to it immediately and went out and bought it.
I think when you think of early rock, that's one of the tracks that immediately springs into your head. It's just got everything. It's got the vocal, slightly cheeky, it's Ozzy's, one of Ozzy's finest moments.
The classic status would be that it came out at just the right time for when music was changing to becoming more heavy, and whenever something is the first, then obviously it's going to be a classic. More than it being the best, the first is the most important, really.
It wasn't really going to be as a single. We wasn't intending on doing a single. We were in the studio to write an album, the Paranoid album, which was going to be originally called War Pigs, but they banned it from being called War Pigs, so we called it Paranoid. Yeah, we went in to record the album, and in the lunch break, I didn't go out to eat with the others, I just stayed at the studio and just came up with this riff, this Paranoid, and when everybody came back, I said, well, let's just put this down, so we put it down, and that was it. It wasn't intended as a single or anything, it was just another one for the album.
Great things are spontaneous. And I'm sure that if Sabbath had sat down and tried to come up with a musical formula on paper, and then, you know, for what they wanted, and then tried to do it, it would have flopped disastrously. But I don't think they thought about it that much. They also, oh yeah, let's do this, and went in and did it, and that's why it works so well.
The track itself has been a hit first time round, a hit in 1980, and in 1995 Kerrang! Magazine dubbed it possibly the greatest riff in rock music. So that's not a bad going for a single track that encapsulated everything perhaps that Dark Side of the Moon would a few years later.
It's real fun to play. When I've played it with Black Sabbath, it's really enjoyable. And also you know that the crowd is going to go nuts when you play Paranoid.
When it's up and running, it's thundering away at you. It's not very long, I think it's under 3 minutes, or if it isn't, it's just over 3 minutes. Then it's gone in a flash, and it just leaves you going, what the hell was that?
The die-hard Black Sabbath fans, especially the whole brigade that believe there is no Sabbath after Ozzy, I think most of them would classify it as the defining moment in Black Sabbath's career.
It's a great record. To this day, it's a great record. It has just a unique feel to it.
Whether it's the greatest song they ever did, I wouldn't think so. But it's immediate, and I wish I had written it.
The strengths of that original Sabbath lineup were the youth and their impetuosity.
The original Black Sabbath lineup had a chemistry which events subsequently proved was absolutely unique. That, of course, is why they've got back together in recent years. There was just something about the way that everything interacted.
You get the feeling that nothing fazed them or nothing scared them. In fact, it was like, you know, let's do this, okay?
If you get it once, you're lucky. And they managed to gel this together and create a unique sound. Nobody'd heard anything like it.
They were pioneers and innovators. I mean, they had reference points, they had bands, obviously their contemporaries and their peers that they were listening to, and you can clearly hear the influences.
The unique thing about Black Sabbath was really the way that they all interacted, I think. And I don't mean off stage, I mean on stage and in the recording studio.
They just had it on stage as a band. They weren't the best musicians in the world. Osbourne wasn't the best singer in the world, but as a unit, they were fantastic. They rocked in a sort of a heavy way that none of the other bands did.
Obviously, as a three-piece instrumental group with Ozzy singing in front, the bass and drums had to give a real kick for Iommi to play over. And particularly because a lot of the songs were not done at the breakneck speed that, say, Led Zeppelin favoured, you'd have to have a rock-solid basis to carry the song. Iommi knew that he had it, he used it, and Ozzy did the rest.
Seeing Sabbath when I was a youngster with Ozzy, and that was classic. You know, it's an experience to be revered, if not musically, just for the experience of watching some loony jump about on stage.
There's no one better on stage than Ozzy. I mean, he's an absolute monster when it comes to that.
On stage, he's a superb entertainer, incredible, enthusiastic.
Well, I think, conversely, he brought the best out of Tony Iommi. So, as a frontman, I don't think Iommi was naturally that much of a sort of extrovert, but the fact he was on stage with Ozzy, he could rely on Ozzy to really stir the audience up, pump them up, and sort of kind of keep the drama up.
Ozzy Osbourne is a completely off-the-wall character, so he brings that to his singing.
Not technically the greatest singer in the world, but a man who used his voice to suit what his band were doing perfectly.
Sometimes I think it's one of the most tuneful and delightful voices in the world. Other times, I think he's just pissing around.
And obviously, mad as a bag of spanners.
As all people are in bands, you always get the, you know, jokers and stuff, and Ozzy was like sort of the joke, you know. While we were putting stuff together, he'd be outside playing football, you know, or walking around the block or something. You know.
I sincerely believe that half the time he's so pissed he didn't know what he was doing anyway. But he was always entertaining.
Ozzy gave the band its visual identity, its vocal identity certainly, and whether people love him or hate him as a singer, he certainly, you know, drew the band out and brought them to fame and fortune. Of that I have no doubt whatsoever.
The original lineup of Black Sabbath hit a peak with Paranoid and Master of Reality, two albums that really gave their musical manifesto in a very, very succinct form. By the time they got on to Volume 4, they'd jettisoned the original producer Roger Bain, and with it they'd taken on extra light and shade using Rick Wakeman, the keyboard player of Yes, to give them a different tone colour.
The danger would be that after 2 or 3 very successful records, then they know that what they have to do is to pretty much continue with that style, and the audience doesn't really want them to divert too much from that.
Black Sabbath was done in 2 days, and Paranoid was 5 days to a week. It took us to do that, finish it. But Massive Reality was quite a different thing. That took a lot longer. That's when we started getting into long time for us. It was going into weeks. I mean, oh God, this is taking a bit long. I think any past product you listen to, you always go, oh dear, we could have done this and we could have done that. But for the time, no, I think it was all right. And Volume 4, the same. That was good for us at the time we'd done Volume 4, because it was the first time I think we'd actually recorded in America. And we went over to LA, and it was great. It was great times. It's a whole new thing to be recording in sort of record plant, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. It was good.
This is a time when you know, an album didn't contain sort of 15 tracks. Some of Sabbath albums had 8 tracks, 4 tracks aside, so they weren't having to overdo it with the writing, which I think meant that what they did put on record stands up head and shoulders against what a lot of today's bands manage to put on, because of course they have to put on far more songs. So that's one reason why the early Sabbath legacy still holds up to this day, and why you can look at any of their first 5 albums and there's going to be 4 or 5 tracks on there that you instantly recognisable as being some of the finest sort of songs from the genre.
The early Sabbath albums worked very, very well, right up to Sabotage.
We were getting to use involved keyboards a bit more, and we thought, well, we don't want to keep playing, and we're not good enough to keep playing these things. So we brought a keyboard player in when we wrote Technical Ecstasy.
Where to go and where to see, it's always
I must admit, I quite enjoyed it. I enjoyed that album, although I think I was a bit too self-indulgent for me. I think I got a bit too over the top with it, because I got more into the production side then, and I was fiddling about. And, but yeah, I think it was probably slightly apart from some of the other albums we've done.
They did 2 albums after Sabotage, and you could clearly see they were a band falling apart.
The last 2 records that they recorded with Ozzy weren't great by a long shot.
Some of them wound up on drugs and all the rest of it. And, you know, Ozzy went, whichever way he went, and he was gone in a lot of ways for quite some years, I think.
It just wasn't working, things just wasn't happening. We ended up recording for rehearsing for 11 months, and nothing was coming up. So we'd come up with plenty of riffs and stuff, but there was no enthusiasm. So it just had to come to an end, and we had to have a talk. So it's not going to happen. And it was the time when Ozzy went. Then I think at that time he was going through a lot of problems himself, and we needed to sort of get away from each other, and we needed to do our own thing. I think, or he certainly needed to do his own thing.
When Ozzy left Black Sabbath, I think for a lot of people, it was almost unthinkable that they could carry on.
Ozzy Osbourne, of course, was quite literally irreplaceable. You just couldn't find somebody to fill his shoes.
Singers are the hardest people to replace, and you couldn't get a complete replacement for Ozzy because Ozzy is so unique.
Now, Ronnie James Dio, perhaps on paper, wouldn't have appeared like the ideal choice to front Black Sabbath. He'd been sacked from Rainbow and was toying around with some other musical things and didn't really know what he was doing, and they got a call and they hooked up. Like I said, on paper it would have looked very odd, and certainly because of Ozzy's strong image and the way that image was linked to Black Sabbath, the band. But you only have to listen to Heaven and Hell to know that this is a marriage made in heaven.
It worked great. I mean, straight away it was like life into the band again by just bringing somebody new in, and the sparkle was there again, and it was really exciting. Everybody was like really ready to go again by whom somebody put something into it. You know.
I don't think that there was a better choice of singer. I don't think anybody else could have gone in and pulled off walking into Ozzy's shoes as well and as creatively and with such a bombastic approach as Ronnie Dio did.
Some of the things we had already written before Ronnie came, so his involvement was good really, because he came up with a few other ideas to add to the songs.
I think it was a risk for them to bring someone in who sounded like he did, because he wasn't the Ozzy replacement. He was clearly going to make the band a very, very different band.
Of course, the way he'd sing, he's a totally different singer to Ozzy, so the way he'd approach things was a lot more operatic, if you like, so it helped a lot for us.
He was a good choice, but he wasn't Ozzy Osbourne, never really wanted to be. He was Ronnie James Dio, and a phenomenally good singer at that.
He did 2 albums with Sabbath, and I think probably the first one, Heaven and Hell, was a high point, perhaps the highest point since Master of Reality.
I think Heaven and Hell is the best Black Sabbath album. I think it sounds the best. I think the songs are absolutely amazing.
Ronnie James Dio is one of the greatest rock singers of all time, and almost anything he lends his voice to has a very classy sort of sound to it.
He clearly had a lot of influence in the band, in the writing, the sound. He transformed Black Sabbath, and I think he transformed it from a dying band into quite a vibrant musical entity.
Captains at the helm sail across the sea of light. Again and again, again and again, and again. Neon nights, neon nights, neon nights.
The first kind of taster many people would have got for Heaven and Hell, Neon Nights, was the first single.
As an introduction to the band, I thought it was fantastic because, I mean, it's so dramatic and it moves along at a great rate of knots.
Neon Nights was an outstanding track from the first Dio album with Sabbath. Obviously, as an opening track, you have to grab the listener's attention. And I think it did that.
It comes rumbling out of the speakers in a barrage of bass and thrashing guitar in a way that Children of the Grave had done when it hit its peak as a song.
Clearly you can hear Dio's influence on this song. He really goes for it and does the track real justice.
It was funny that around the early 80s, or late 70s, early 80s, certainly in Britain and probably most other parts of the world, rock music, or quite heavy rock music, was quite commercial.
I guess it's as commercial as Sabbath get. I don't know what chart placing it got to. I think it did fairly well.
You would get it played in discos and on the radio and on TV. It was quite acceptable for what we would call now like a heavy metal band to be in the charts and to be on top of the pops and whatever.
They went from being more of a sort of straight ahead metal band to they developed this more kind of like more of a heavy rock sound, very melodic, still very heavy as well, over the whole album. But Neon Nights is a good example that, you know, they were heavy but very melodic, and evidently it was going to work, and it worked very, very well for them.
Die Young was a very clever combination of the best of Rainbow and the best of Sabbath.
Die Young was a good song, one of the better ones from the Heaven and Hell album, and I think it worked because it was vibrant, it was fast, powerful, and fantastic vocals from Ronnie James Dio.
It's very difficult to pinpoint what would be the greatest song of that era, but that's got to be in there, definitely. Die Young, fantastic song.
Layered in a few Queen-like harmonies as well, which certainly did it no harm, with Queen sailing high over the punk wave that had engulfed so many of the other groups of that era.
Die young, gonna die young. Someone stopped the
Musically, it's probably the strongest Black Sabbath album ever. Now, I mean, you know, these arguments raised, Ozzy's the only singer Black Sabbath. Well, Ozzy was a great singer for Black Sabbath, but so was Ronnie James Dio, certainly on the Heaven and Hell album. I mean, musically, Sabbath, the whole sort of sound had changed. They'd sounded tired, a tired band on the two albums that preceded Heaven and Hell. But Heaven and Hell comes out at the height of resurgence of interest in heavy metal through the new wave of British heavy metal in the UK, and Heaven and Hell comes out and is an instant hit, and is chock full of fantastic songs, and proves to any doubters that yes, this guy has created a slightly different sounding Black Sabbath, but one that's no less appealing.
He brought baggage with him. He was a known quantity, but he certainly did manage to add to the Sabbath legend without taking too much away.
Ronnie James Dio was a good choice to replace anybody, or to be himself. But he sure as hell wasn't Ozzy Osbourne, and didn't try to be, and that about him I admire. Didn't attempt to be Ozzy Osbourne. He kept his own personality.
Look to the people and on through the mist to the hill of the Headless Cross, where all witches meet on a night such as this, and the power of darkness is ours. They come face to face, eye to eye, soul to soul, with an angel that fell from the sky. Born on the air of the screams and the wails of the masses are poised to die. Listen to the beat as the pounding air to a tune of thunder. Watches the angels ride again to a fate of death and torture. Oh no, 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 at the Headless Cross, at the Headless Cross.
Tony Martin was an unknown guy, also from the Birmingham area, which is a good thing, really.
A lot of people didn't know who the hell this Tony Martin guy was, you know, and probably confused a lot of people, probably more in America than anywhere else. But that said, his first stab at a Sabbath album was a very, very good one.
I always felt a bit sorry for Tony Martin. It was a very, very hard job to come in at that stage, and a lot of pressure.
Tony Martin, I think, was welcomed by fans, and he soon proved himself to be one of the more adaptable singers. He could do an Ozzy, he's probably nearer in style to Dio, but basically he could cover all the bases, and he had something of his own to offer as well.
A lot of people have slagged Tony Martin being in Black Sabbath, but I think if you look at the material that he recorded with them, for consistency alone, he was probably better than anyone.
On stage, Tony Martin was a very static performer, but he had a great voice. I mean, a really, really good voice.
Technically, he was a very good singer, and might have been the best that Sabbath could have got.
Tony Martin came up, he was a great singer, I thought. Superb.
I think he's a great singer, and he did sound very much like Dio in many of the songs that he sang. So the identity that Sabbath had built up with Ronnie James Dio, they certainly didn't want to let that one go by the sound of it. And I think with Tony Martin, it worked very, very well.
From the first evil night, when a black flash of light cut the crucifix half to the ground, yeah. There's been no escape from the power of Satan on a nation so brave and so proud. Listen to the beat, the band that lands to a tune of thunder. Watches the angels ride again to a fate of death or torture. Oh no, 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 at the Headless Cross, at the Headless Cross.
Headless Cross was the beginning of an upswing in the fortunes of Black Sabbath, certainly the post-Ozzy Black Sabbath.
Headless Cross is Tony Martin's finest hour with Black Sabbath.
I thought Headless Cross certainly had its moments. I think the song Headless Cross, again, is another Sabbath classic.
They create a very bombastic, loud, heavy rock album.
I don't think Headless Cross was a great album. I think it was a good album. I can remember when it first came out, I think it was IRS Records, and a lot of press was written about it, and Kerrang and so on, and they kept ranting and raving about how fantastic the album was. And it was good, but it wasn't fantastic.
It's not regarded in the same terms as, say, a Paranoid or a Masters of Reality or a Heaven and Hell. And that's probably because the quality of all the songs doesn't hold up to the quality of all the songs on those other records. But it's certainly a very, very good record, and it's still one that you can listen to today and get a lot out of.
I think it laid down a marker. It wasn't the best post-Ozzy album, but it was among them. And I think it showed the way that Sabbath were going to try and progress through the 80s and into the 90s.
Do you see our vision? All the perfect grace. Does it make you laugh? Put a smile on your face. Do you need a mirror? Do you see it well? Does the hand of God still draw the breath? There are people laughing, they were laughing at you. If only you could see what you're saying was true. Still generals fighting, making war on the world. Don't they know? Don't they know? No, no, no. Yeah.
Tony Martin he sang on one really good Sabbath album, that's the Headless Cross. I personally haven't got much time for the music that's on Tear and Cross Purposes.
You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, which is sort of apt for Black Sabbath. But you know, if you do something different, oh, well, it's not like Sabbath used to be. And if you try and sound exactly like how they were, well, why don't they do something new? You know, you almost can't win.
When people talk about Black Sabbath, and when they always seem to miss out on Tony Martin, and I think it's a great shame, because many Sabbath fans have enjoyed the albums that he's done over the years.
Tony Martin's certainly been underrated by a lot of people as a singer, and I think when we look back, we'll find that the albums he appeared on with Sabbath, although not the best-selling and certainly not the most critically applauded, held together as a body of work that he certainly has no need to be ashamed of.
Rocket engine burning fuel so fast, up into the black sky so fast, burning metal through the atmosphere, oblivion, worry, hate and fear, with the hateful battles waging on, rockets flying to the glowing sun, the gift of eternal blood, freedom from the final suicide, yeah.
I think Into the Void is one of the classic Sabbath songs. To me, it's up there with Paranoid and Black Sabbath, the track itself.
Bill Ward, the drummer, feels that Into the Void was Sabbath at its absolute height, and he's saying that. Who are we to argue?
Just from the off, from the very first opening riff, you know that it's a headbanging track, and I think that's the appeal. No mystery about it, you know, heads down, no nonsense, boogie, and it's going to be, you know, headbanging all the way.
It was an interesting concept Geezer Butler coming up with, that he wanted to jump into a rocket ship and escape what's going on Earth.
What's interesting about this song is that it's the vocals are very sparse. There's not a lot of vocals on them, and in general, Sabbath tracks feature vocals heavily. There's very little vocal, and that works great. Again, it's displaying Tony Iommi to be a really, really fine guitar player, and yeah, it's got all the ingredients of the rock classic that it deservedly is.
Close the city and tell the people that something's coming to come. Get the darkness up, rushing forward to take a bite from the world.
It's often been debated whether Tony Martin could deliver songs such as Mob Rules, you know, from the songs from the Dio era, and the answer's got to be no. Dio was a very confident, overblown, egotistical guy, quite small, you know, short in stature, so I think he overcompensated with his sort of on-stage antics. So a very hard act to follow.
I think Tony Martin could deliver almost anything, if not everything, that Ronnie James Dio did vocally.
I think Tony Martin did a great job, particularly on the Dio songs, because his voice is quite close to Ronnie's.
He did gravitate towards the Dio era songs, and that was really because he was young enough to have been influenced by Rainbow as well as Black Sabbath themselves. He could tackle pretty much anything, and I think Mob Rules was definitely grist to his mill.
I think Tony Martin was such a proficient singer, still is such a proficient singer. I think he could actually cover most of the Sabs, probably with the exception, ironically, of Ozzy.
Revolution in their minds, children start to march against the world in which they have to live. All of it gets in their heart. Instead of being pushed around and told just what to do, the fight don't work until they've won. Love comes flowing through.
I think Sabbath fans often question Tony Martin's ability to deliver certain songs, and the song Children of the Grave, I'm afraid he doesn't quite get to grips with it.
Most Sabbath fans would definitely associate Children of the Grave with Ozzy Osbourne. But of course he didn't write the lyrics. It was Geezer Butler's idea to tell us that if we carry on polluting the planet, then we're not going to be able to live here at all. Now that message was still certainly relevant when Tony Martin got hold of the song, but as something that was so indelibly tied in with Ozzy, perhaps that was a challenge too far.
It's a great song. It's in classic Sabbath mould, the dark side coming in sort of dark and moody, and it just sounds a little bit bland. Martin's vocals over the top of this track, so I can see the point of the die-hard Sabbath fans, early era Sabbath fans who question Tony Martin's ability to sort of cover material such as this.
Tony Martin's a very, very good singer, and his role in Black Sabbath should never really be sort of undermined.
Tony kept faithful to Tony Iommi's vision of what Black Sabbath was, and that is the vision that the fans have been following throughout the years.
Some people say that the Tony Martin years were underrated. I don't think they were at all. I just think they were maybe misunderstood, not quite as impactful as Ronnie James Dio and obviously Ozzy. I mean, I'd listen to a Black Sabbath album with Tony Martin on it. Yeah, I would, and I would enjoy it, and of course I have, and I've played it. But it's always that thing in the back of my head: where's the voice of Oz? Where's the voice of Oz?
Make a joke and I will sigh, and you will laugh and I will cry. Happiness I cannot feel, like love to me is so unreal. Sabbath. Thank you.